Hello, my name's Sister Lizzie. I'm Anglican and I am a novice with a religious community. It has been 18 months now since the video I made called The Day I Entered the Convent. So basically, I've been in religious life exploring for 1.5 years now. So here is a video to give you a bit of an update, answer some of the questions I've been asked more recently, and point you in directions of where you might find other information that might interest you about Anglican religious life. I will hold your people in my heart. Something just feels very right about being in religious life, and it feels very right to be a novice. That the day that I was received as a novice, or once I started being called sister and wearing a habit, I felt that I was all the more close to where God wanted me, or what I was made for in life, or something to that effect. So something does feel that there's a kind of deep rightness about being a novice. Having said that, I haven't I haven't had a kind of 100% certainty that I'm in the right place, or this is the community that I am like 100% certain I'm going to be with for the rest of my life. And speaking with other novices, a lot of them haven't had that kind of 100% certainty, but they also have just had this sense of, but something does feel very right about this, or at least right enough to stick with the community I'm with, and keep on living within religious life and exploring this sense of vocation. But the main thing that comes to mind is just that piece of, yes, this is where God wants me, or at least yes, I'm getting closer and closer to where God wants me, and just something deeply feels like this is what God made me for. I'm very much in the middle of a discernment journey at the moment with a lot of sisters' help. When I first started looking at religious life, I and a lot of other people felt I was called to a particular style of religious life. That you might be aware that there are quite a lot of different ways of living out religious life and different emphases. So a lot of people felt I was called to a particular form of religious life. And over the months that I've been exploring religious life with sisters' help, increasingly a number of us are feeling that actually God might be inviting me or calling me to a different style of religious life from what we first thought, or wanting to bring out another part of me more strongly, or something like that. And what has been nice is all the sisters who've been helping me in this discernment have all seemed to have a genuine desire to help me work out where God wants me, or where God's calling me. That there hasn't been a sense of, you might think a community wants to hold on to someone even if it's not quite right for them, just to increase their numbers or something. But I think they would think that they would realize that that's not fair on the person. And the motive that I've come across in all the sisters that I've talked with seems to be just, even if it means letting go of you for you to explore your vocation with a different community, they have seemed happy with that. I mean, obviously stability is really important in religious life, but in some instances, if a number of sisters feel, yes, this is actually what God's calling you to, then it is appropriate to let you explore with a different style of religious life. So it's just been really nice that all the sisters, novice guardian and sisters who've been helping me, have had as their motive just, let's try and work out where God's calling you. I would say the first 3 months or so were a mixture of excitement because everything was new and I felt one step closer to what I'd been feeling God calling me to for years, really, like underneath the surface. So a mixture of excitement of being new to this religious life and living in community and things, but at the same time, it was definitely hard work because you've got a whole new way of life to get used to, a whole new set of rules and just ways of doing things to get used to, a lot of personalities to get to know. So yeah, just a mixture of hard work and excitement. Around the 4th to 6th month was when that initial excitement and novelty had worn off, and that was about the kind of time when occasionally I'd find myself feeling a bit homesick or missing my previous life. And I've spoken with other novices who found a similar they had a similar experience about the same kind of number of months in, but everyone's different. But a few other people just noticed that kind of pattern. After about the around the 6 month mark, things seem to get a bit easier again. And then about around the kind of the 1 year anniversary of me leaving my former life or leaving my former city, um, again, a bit like you get when someone's bereaved and going through a first anniversary, that was quite a difficult few weeks because again, it just kind of brought back to my memory like the life that I'd left. But once I'd gone through that first anniversary, those kinds of feelings of like homesickness or missing my previous life, I haven't really had them since that first anniversary mark. So that's just my personal experience. And just the longer I've been in this process overall, the easier it's got, because after a while you get used to the living. You've got to know the rules, you've got to know personalities, the people you're living with far better, and so it kind of is like downhill from there after after the initial few months. So it's definitely worth persevering through the various difficulties of the first few months, because I think it does get easier over time in some respects. Also, I've experienced something of when you can't kind of run away from a situation or change a situation, really the only thing you can do is change your attitude to it, or change the love you're putting into it. So something else I've experienced is, as well as things just like timings of how many months have gone by making things more difficult or easy, um, that there's something about that I've experienced of, um, the more you can have an attitude of love towards God and other people, towards what's involved in your daily life, and grow in love towards the people you're living with, that also, I don't know if makes things easier is quite the right word, but it really helps. Getting used to living in community when I was so used to living on my own, and I'd spent years living on my own and quite enjoyed it, and I don't mind solitude. So there's been that, and also I had developed my own rule of life, I suppose, and had various ways of praying or various spiritual practices that were very important to me and very central to my life. And it's been quite difficult having to either let go of some of those or adapt some of them now that I'm in a new situation. Definitely singing, as in the style you would hear in cathedrals. Obviously, we do sing quite a lot in a convent setting, but it's a completely different style of singing. It's a different sound from a different part of you. It's a completely different range from the range that I sing like better in. Um, Even the hymns on a Sunday morning at the Eucharist tend to be unaccompanied and a lot lower than, well, lower than you would normally sing in church, and definitely a lot lower than I sang in my kind of previous choir life or singing solos kind of life, because I was singing like high things. So I miss that a lot. I've had some opportunities just to sing on my own in a room at times and in places where hopefully I wouldn't disturb other people, but that obviously that's not the same as singing with a choir. I've spoken with quite a few sisters who can empathise, because quite a lot of sisters have had to give up something of their former life. Quite a few sisters have had other things they've had to give up that were a big part of their life before, or that they were professional in. And a lot of sisters say that even when God invites you, asks you to something where you do have to give something up, God still does find ways of using elements of that. So if you've got a musical background, you might not be able to play the instrument you used to play, but God can still use that musicality within religious life. So lots of sisters have said how they can see God using parts of the things they've given up in their new life. But the reality is that yes, there do seem to be some things that there just aren't ways of continuing to use in religious life. That just is, I suppose, there are quite a few Bible passages where Jesus asks people to just let go of what they were doing or drop what they used to do and follow him. And that seems to be like the reality that I've experienced so far. And I just have to remind myself that at the end of the day, I do feel that God is giving me far more than God's asking me to let go of. I honestly don't really notice an age difference. I think that's mainly because the people I live with are, we've got so much in common, but because we feel called to something similar, and actually that gives me in some ways more in common with them than possibly other people my own age. So I often don't even notice any age gap. There have been lots of times I've just been sat having a cup of tea with sisters in their 70s, chatting about our former boyfriends as if I'm just talking with someone my own age. The sisters that I live with, and other sisters that I've known over the years, aren't in any way out of touch with the world. Pretty much all of them have learnt how to use email and internet to some degree. The only time I do notice a bit of a gap in a world experience, or something, life experience, something like that, is just obviously just the way that the world has been different over the last 20 years or so from how it was, say, 40 years ago. So my experience of living in my flat on my own, or my experience at work, may well have been quite different from other sisters' lives before they entered community. Um, and when it comes to technology, I guess I'm far more familiar with things like WhatsApp and YouTube, and just how, I guess I just seem to be a bit more in touch with how people in their 20s to 40s think, I guess. Not saying that other sisters are out of touch, but something that's nice is that the quite a few sisters actually, that they seem to want to learn from people my kind of age, our kind of age. And there have been quite a few times where people have asked me what my understanding is of what younger generations are thinking or looking for, or other sisters have asked me for help with more technological things. So in those instances, it's precisely because I'm younger that I have actually felt useful to the community. There's something very beautiful about finally being with other people who feel called to something similar to what you feel called to. There's something very beautiful in my experience about all wearing the same habit, being, it just sort of emphasizes that feeling of being one body and one voice, and especially in chapel when you're all chanting or singing together at the same volume, like really listening to each other. You can actually sound like one voice, like the more you practice that listening and togetherness. So there's something just beautiful about that feeling of togetherness and being like one body. um it feels, just this way of life feels a real privilege, because for years I was trying to live something like religious life but on my own, and on top of a full-time, the equivalent of full-time job hours, and it's really pretty much impossible to do it in that context. So I currently have a privileged life of being able to have like the time to pray or read, that I know a lot of people just wouldn't have in the realities of their work life and their family life. So that is something beautiful that I feel, because I have that, I feel like a responsibility to use my time well, and in a way that's as unselfish as possible. I think one of the highlights of the last few months have been, I've been getting quite a few messages and meeting people in real life who have told me how these videos I've been making have encouraged them to start looking at religious life themselves, which is far beyond what I thought would happen when I started making these videos. I didn't realize how many people were going to watch them, and I didn't know how much impact they were going to have on people. So that has been extremely exciting, not just because people are watching my videos, but just thinking about the future of Anglican religious life, and knowing that other people my kind of age are, or any age, but just knowing that other people are looking at joining this kind of discernment adventure that I'm on. And talking of people my age, it's been another thing that's been really nice, has been we have inter-novitiate conferences where the novices from all the different Anglican communities around the country come together 3 times a year over 2 years to have some teaching together and just chat with each other, support each other, talk to each other about each other's communities and see how they're different, and just like learn about each other's communities. And that's been really nice, because on that I have met with other people my own age who are looking at religious life, and at each of the conferences I've been on so far there's been a nice mixture between male and female, quite a few in our 30s but also a few in their, I'd say, 50s and 60s, and quite a nice mixture of people from who are novices or postulants in some cases, novices in more contemplative communities, and people who are novices in more active communities. So I've really enjoyed those conferences, and just knowing that there are other people, knowing there are other people on this discernment journey and considering religious life themselves. I know a lot of people have been asking me to make more videos to put on this channel now that I am in religious life, and I think the kinds of videos people are most interested in seem to be the ones more about, here's what my convent looks like, or here's a day in the life. There's actually something out there. I mean, even if I did that, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to make more videos, I'm having to leave that in God's hands, but even if I did, they would only be of my one community, and each community is so different, and there are so many communities out there, that something I just wanted to bring to your attention is the Anglican Religious Life Twitter account. I don't know if it will show very well on here, but it's called Monk Nun C of E. I'll put lots of useful information in the description box below. I know nothing about Twitter. I don't use it. I don't have a Twitter account or anything. It was my sister introduced me to this. She'd come across it somehow, as in like my biological sister. And there was a week where Sister Elizabeth Pio from the Society of the Sisters of Bethany was tweeting like a week in her life as a sister with that community, and my biological sister found them so entertaining. She sent me the link saying, you've got to look at this Twitter account, it's hilarious, or it's just really good combination of information, and Sister Elizabeth Pio's tweets are very entertaining. So I've been looking at it every now and again since, and basically different religious, or different brothers or sisters or people in in other forms of religious life rather than the more traditional forms, take it in turns to tweet throughout their week, and I'll often put photos up of where they are, what they're up to, and tweet throughout the day what they're up to. So that is a similar thing to day in the life that might interest you, that I'll put the information for below. I know that quite a few people watch these videos out of sheer curiosity because it's an unusual life choice to make, I guess. And I love answering people's questions who are asking out of curiosity. But also there might be some people watching because they're wondering if they might be called to religious life. So there's that kind of deeper reason for watching these kinds of things. So if that's you, I'll put all the links to the most useful information I'm aware of on the internet for you. I'll put in the description box below. So there are things like there's an Anglican religious community website and a Church of England one that kind of give more of an overview of what Anglican religious life is and what communities are out there. Then you've got communities' own websites, and obviously you can go to a convent or a monastery and stay as a guest. So quite a few communities offer alongside programs where you can live for say 3 months or longer. But I know from experience that I can imagine only a few people would be able to do that, because you'd have to give up your job and where you're living in order to be an alongside, or unless you can get a sabbatical or something. So I get that would be quite difficult for a lot of people, but the offer is there, or the ability to do that is there with a lot of communities. But you can definitely go and stay with a community for a few days as a guest and just get to meet monks and nuns and communities in real life, because there's only so much you can gain from reading things on the internet. You really do need to meet people in real life. And a few other ways you could do that might be at vocations days that either a diocese might put on or a community might put on a vocations day or a vocation retreat. There are monastic taster days that you sometimes see in cities, or again put on by dioceses or put on by communities themselves. There's a religious life presence at the Greenbelt Christian Festival each year. So there are ways out there of, even if you can't get to stay at a monastery or a convent just yet, there are other ways increasingly of meeting up with monks and nuns in real life. So that is definitely what I would like to encourage people to do. If you have been so far just watching my YouTube videos or other people's YouTube videos and reading stuff on the internet, the next stage is definitely to go and meet monks and nuns in real life. So thank you for watching, and happy exploring.